up in this climate where Roe versus Wade was passed, and you're witnessing the liberation of women everywhere. And I just was wondering about your perspective here, Sally, because you're a Spitfire if ever there was one. Today we're staring down at the business end, essentially, of the potential gutting of our rights. And I watched a sea of women marching a few weeks ago across the world the day after everything happened in the inauguration. And I really thought about what those rights meant. Now, at the time that I was watching this, nothing had really started to be gutted, and it was just potentially things, and everybody was like, give it a chance. But I'm watching things happen and be undone in various communities, whether it be LGBTQ, and you name it, we could go on and on. And we're all in this place of being fearful about what's happening. But I wondered about your perspective, specifically coming from that time. Can you tell us about the societal norms that were expected of a woman and what you think about us maybe regressing and going backwards?
Well, to give you a little background, when I was 13 and a freshman in high school, I totally considered myself a liberated female. Back then, we weren't even allowed to wear pants to school. We had to wear dresses.
Oh.
Whatever, yeah.
Okay.
And so I protested, and I even gave a speech in front of the school board where I remember quoting the Bible, but I don't remember what verse it was, but somehow I made it fit into us being able to wear pants.
You quoted the Bible, the most regressive book about women's rights, to get pants on?
I wish I could remember which verse I pulled out of my ass, but whatever I did or said, I can remember standing there. I can remember what I was wearing. I can remember the faces in the crowd, but I cannot remember what I said. But anyway, whatever I did say worked. But it was very restrictive. The only thing we could wear was pantsuit. That's a jacket with matching pants. Anyway, at least though, we got somewhere. So I was really starting to feel empowered.
I love it.
And then, here I'm a senior in high school, and on the feminist front, Roe versus Wade had just been passed. The pill had been invented, and we were, for the first time in history, in charge of our own bodies. For the first time in history.
Wow.
No more pregnant and barefoot in the kitchen. We were on the path to being equal to men. Anyway, so I went to college for a while, and then I started working. I was making plenty of money, and I wanted to get my first apartment, but they wouldn't lease to me unless my father, co-signed the lease. So women were not allowed to sign leases by themselves. Then I tried to get a telephone. They wouldn't allow me to get a telephone unless I had a husband or a father's signature.
Wow.
And it was the same with credit cards. Yeah. So we've come along. We had come a long way, but we had a long way to go. So I started going to women's conferences. I got to hear the leading feminists of our time speak. I started wearing the orange vest you were talking about, helping women get through the crowd of men holding up dead baby signs. I was even at an abortion clinic when a bomb went off.
Wow.
The stupid guy put it way in the back. So it just blew up some, storage rooms.
Right.
So nobody was hurt, thank goodness.
Thank goodness.
It did make the news. But it was, in the 70s, trying to be an independent woman, we couldn't even keep a job if we became pregnant.
Wow.
It was law in many states that a wife could not, under any circumstances, refuse to have sex with her husband. Couldn't do it. So marital rape was not recognized in the court.
It was not recognized as rape.
No, because the man had the right,
to have his wife.
under any circumstances, she couldn't refuse.
Right.
So, and until 1993, companies didn't have to provide maternity leave. It was Jimmy Carter that got us that, thank goodness. I remember in 1978 trying to buy a car. I had a great credit history, gainfully employed. They still would not let me do it without a husband or father's signature. So, in all of my jobs, and back then, yes, and I'm not bragging or anything, but I was a very pretty, thin, blonde, blue-eyed woman,
Right.
And I was constantly sexually harassed by every boss I had. And there was nothing I could do about it.
No human resources to go to, no chain of command.
No, it wasn't against the law. I mean,
It was the Mad Men era. It was like you could just, like, hey, honey, come
exactly.
here, that kind of situation.
Oh, yeah. And they always made it and sound like the woman's fault. And trust me, back then, you thought it was your fault. They had you
brainwashed.
Yeah. Your skirt was too short. You were at the wrong place at the wrong time. Your fault. So, nothing would ever happen. I was even tackled once.
Tackled?
Walking down the hall. Tackled. We were at a conference, and everybody was staying in this motel. I was working for a men's clothing store at the time. And it was late at night, and I was walking down the hall, I think, to go get a Coke at the vending machine. And I hear this man running, and I turn around, and it is my supervisor. Not my manager, but his manager.
Right.
And he was running full force and tackled me. And I'm not going to tell you what he did to me. I got away. But, I mean, just stuff like that is what happened. You know who got fired? I did.
What?
So, yeah. So I went through a lot of jobs back then.
Wow. What impact did that have on you, or how did it affect the way that you viewed your relationships with men, especially if they just kind of could have you and you didn't have any agency or rights?
Well, on the outside, I went along with society like I had been taught.
Okay.
On the inside, I was pissed. And I hated them. I refused. I mean, literally, one guy told me that if I went down on him, I would get a promotion or a raise.
Wow.
I walked out. You know what I mean? So I went through a lot of jobs. So I was pissed off, but as walking out the door, I didn't say anything. I didn't do anything. So it was kind of a bipolar, going on.
Yeah. Well, it's just interesting to me because that would definitely have affected. But you know what? I say that now from my viewpoint here, where I've had rights and I've experienced that as a woman, that people do have maternity leave. You grew up in a world where that just wasn't the case. So if that was your norm, then I imagine you do just walk out, you refuse to do the thing he wants you to do, and you go on with your life thinking, oh, that's just another day, not realizing.
Find another job. Well, no, on the outside. On the inside, you realize you know what's going on and you want to do something about it. It's this fear factor, that they had this control that they had. But talking about this, this last presidential election and how everybody's in fear that it will go back, I think people my age especially are super afraid. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of presidential elections. I've participated in marches for women's rights in New York, where I almost got arrested, stuff like that. But still, whoever won, you kind of accepted it and went on.
Right.
This time, I literally cried for days. I didn't get out of bed. I was so, depressed. Having watched all the rhetoric and the fear factor that he was installing, and all this, and then for him to win, I knew. I have 3 granddaughters. What are they going to face if Roe versus Wade is overturned?
I can't imagine.
They would literally be slaves to the government during their childbearing years. They'll be forced to give birth if they got pregnant. But, they might not even have clean air and water. We have a bunch of global warming deniers, now that are in control. And it's already begun. Coal companies can dump their waste in streams and creeks now.
They're going ahead with the Dakota Access Pipeline. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's been announced that, fracking, oil and gas regulations are going to be eliminated. They're trying to eliminate the EPA. The guy the other day that's now in charge of it literally admitted that, the EPA was useless. I mean, oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's an overwhelming, the whole thing feels very overwhelming. To me, I am, me, Sally, and you've known me since I was a child, essentially. and I am very even-tempered, and I really wait, and I gather a lot of information and intel. And I want to make a right decision, and I want to be a person that's approaching something with a level head. But everything in me is like, freak out. You know what I mean? So it's a, you know, I'm trying to be really responsible and like, well, let's just wait and let's be objective. But it's evaporating very quickly because I too share your sentiment of sobbing and asking and praying and saying, okay, angels, this is going to be all right, right? And they're like, no. And so the conclusion that I've come to, and I actually wrote about it in this month's article of Connect 10, is that we have to shift our energy and create the thing we want. We are all in fear, and fear does nothing but like create more fear. And so this change had to happen. I feel like almost it had to be this way so that we could have something to kind of galvanize around and kind of say, okay, we want to be this kind of a humanity. And even if whatever is happening from the top down feels like it's just happening to us and we're victims of it, I know that nothing lasts forever. One, that's the only thing I've taken solace in. And two, I know that we can affect change by our collective thought consciousness. That's my belief. I believe that we got to this place by a collective thought consciousness, but that was more based on fear, right? So now it's time to shift.
Well, you know, during my life, I've seen the pendulum swing, you know, to the left, to the right, to the left, to the right. I've seen it swing in the house market prices up and down, interest rates up and down, you know, the financial markets up and down. I've seen the pendulum swing. You know, when interest rates start going up and people start complaining, I'm like, well, it's time. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just one of those things.
Yeah, the natural ebb and flow.
Seen it, but I've never seen it swing this far right, ever. And it's a very, very scary process. And what I think, it's not even finished swinging. So
yeah,
that totally scares me. I mean, this installation of unnecessary fear of of religions other than Christianity, this installation of fear of foreigners, you know, this ban of Muslims and roundup of undocumented, you know, aliens, and all done for no real reason. In the past, we've done horrible things to groups of people, but it was in response to something, like the bombing of Pearl Harbor. So we gathered up all the Japanese and put them in internment camps. You know, we had a lot of our privacy, freedom taken away, and we let it happen. You know, I mean, that was fine. You know, after 9/11, you know, and started bombing others. But you can't point a finger at anything that's happened this time. It just all of a sudden, well, let's ban these people. And let's, you know, send everybody home and tear up families or whatever. Nothing specific happened. You know, everything that they're quoting on the news, oh, look what happened in Sweden. Well, nothing did.
Well, that's interesting. Nothing had happened, but that is what I want. That's what I'm always striving to teach people is we have collective thought forms. Nothing had happened, and then subsequently, a couple days later, something did happen. And that's how thought forms manifest into physical realm. Because how do we go from a country that's renowned for its peace and neutrality to rioting after a few days of someone putting out with powerful words? And I don't just mean because of the place that they hold in presidency. I mean, our words are powerful. And so you say something, and even though it was false at the moment, it then became a truth. And I found that to be very, very interesting and a little scary.
Yeah, well, as I say, he's been successful in instilling this, you know, nonsensical fears into people, into a large group of people. He's been successful now. And, I mean, and he's just beginning, really, on saying that, you know, CNN, the BCC, you know, are fake news. And these people that follow him, no matter what, are not watching, you know, BBC anymore or CNN or any of those other, the New York Times. These are rock solid newspaper. Yes, they get things occasionally wrong, but no, they try not to, you know. And I mean, they're good news sources, and now they're being told not to watch them. And that seems to be just the beginning. I mean, you know, as far as, I mean, we banned news outlets from the White House the other day. I mean, you know,
Yeah, I
He's
know.
got
I do.
Brett Bart, a known white racist, fake